Well, hey, what's up? We're going to be talking about body and physical way of learning, the learning style for doing basically using bodily, physical, hands-on stuff. And that's learning style that you can use if you really have a hard time actually learning in school, especially if you have something like ADHD, dyslexia, or any other kind of learning disabilities. This is a tactic you definitely want to use, something I've used a lot through college and medical school. And it's helped me significantly. So let's get started right after this intro. Welcome back, my Optimine leaders, my Optimine performers. We are going to be talking about bodily and physical type of style of learning, basically hands-on type of learning, and how you can use this to really help you excel in school, but not just school. If you're actually trying to learn something at work, or if you're trying to learn a new different skill or learn a different language, you could apply this to anything when it comes to just learning anything. So this is a series of videos I talk about five different learning styles that aren't talked about typically in school, but are really effective for people who think different than the logical and also the linguistic way of type of learning. So previously we talked about basically the visual spatial way of learning, and you could watch that video in the end of this. I'll put a link towards it at the end of this video. But let's talk about the bodily and physical type of learning, the learning style. So what this really means is basically you're trying to use more of your hands-on, using your body to be able to actually learn any difficult concepts. So the first way you can actually apply this is acting it out. I love this. In fact, I feel like in medical school, anytime we had examinations that required giving us a scenario of a patient, it almost felt like you were kind of like acting out a what is that show? Grey's Anatomy or Hospital, I think is the show. I can't remember. One of those old school hospital TV shows. And you're actually acting out the scenario because there would be a situation with a certain patient, and you as a doctor had to know what kind of treatment to implement, what kind of diagnosis, what blood work to run, all these different things. And so it's more acting out. So I felt like I really excelled at this because I started using this earlier on in college, where basically if there's a difficult concept of trying to grasp something, whether it was in chemistry or organic chemistry, I would tend to kind of act out the situation either with other classmates and be able to kind of understand from a different perspective so that you kind of see it in more different angles. And by doing this, especially for people who are more physical or bodily, types of learners, hands-on types of learners, this really does help solidify what you're trying to learn. So try to find ways that you can take a subject, especially history, for example. If there is certain types of dates that you need to learn, what happened actually during that time period, act it out. You don't necessarily have to go get a bunch of costumes. I mean, if you want, that's great. Really even helps solidify it, but you don't necessarily need to. But just acting it out a little bit, especially if you do a dialogue with somebody else, that can really solidify it. Also help you really grasp what it was like back then. So that's something you really can do. And then the second way that I say that is really helpful for if you're hands-on, bodily, physical type of learner is the power of writing. So what I mean by this is we talk, linguistics usually is when you're listening to stuff and you're reading stuff. But actually physically writing things down, so note-taking, but making some really good notes, or if you're actually studying in the library and you're studying a difficult concept, is when key things start popping in your head, start writing it down to be able to remember it versus just actively just reading the same textbook. So when you're reading a textbook, make your own notes versus just highlighting the textbook. So have your own actual notes that you can actually grasp, because physically, the physical part of writing and drawing and making diagrams and stuff like that, physically doing that helps really solidify that, especially for people who are more hands-on type of learners. The third way, and I kind of talked about this in the visual spatial type of learning style, but kind of going a step further, is actively actually making flashcards. So if you're learning a language, for example, in fact, they've done studies on this where they took two separate groups where they asked somebody they were learning French. They asked somebody, a group to just learn the subjects. And so they took all the flashcards and they were just trying to learn these words. And then the other group, they were asked to actually kind of group them into verbs, nouns, adjectives, and group them in that way and learn them in that way. And it was big, huge difference as far as what they were able to retain versus the group that just passively try to learn it through the flashcards versus grouping it together. So you should apply the same thing when it comes to learning any language, learning any, mathematical equations or history or science. You can make flashcards, but group them together. Actively grouping them together will help you solidify. This is something I had to do a lot in college, but even more so in medical school, because I had to memorize tons of different medications, but at the same time had to memorize tons of different types of herbs and also different nutrients and how they had interactions and stuff. So what I would do is I would group them. And especially when I was studying for my medical boards, this helped me significantly because they would ask really hard questions when it came to understanding the interactions between, they would have a list of patients like, okay, this patient is taking this type of medication, these types of supplements, these types of nutrients. What should you implement? What should they should not be taking? What do you need to take out? And by grouping together, I would visualize these different groups and different interactions because I grouped them together versus just passively just memorizing a bunch of different medications or passively memorizing a bunch of different herbs or nutrients, and was able to actually excel in that part of the area by doing that. The other thing that you can do with these flashcards is you can get a nice big board. This is what I did too, is you start pinning them in groups so you can see it in a big visual. So this is kind of using both physical and visual type of learning, which is what I am. I'm a big hands-on visual type of learner. I really excelled in this by actually whenever I would implement these types of tactics so that you could just see how fun this can be. And that's what was so exciting about it. It takes a little bit more effort on your part, but people might think, well, that just might take too much time. It doesn't, because once you start getting used to doing it, you actually don't have to sit there and read the same book over and over again to try to solidify it, because then you're just brain dumping. But when you're actually physically, actively doing it, you don't have to do that many times because you're actively using all your senses, and therefore it solidifies and helps you retain the information and then use it for a long period of time. So it actually goes more into your long-term memory versus just short-term memory. So I hope you found that really beneficial. If you want to learn more tactics and strategies when it comes to learning, especially also for ADHD health, also personal development, also work tactics for in your work-life balance, as well as different relationships when it comes to people with ADHD and other mental health issues, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. We talk about that every Monday and Thursday around 11 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We have a new video post out on those types of things. So hit the subscribe button. Also hit the bell notification button so you don't miss out on any future videos, and give us a thumbs up if you like this video. So until next time, this is Dr. LeGrand signing out. And remember, you have an awesome mind. Thanks. Bye.